Feel that tremor under your skin, that ancient pulse of empathy ready to shatter at any moment. You've walked through storms of other people's pain so many times that your own sense of self now trembles on the brink. Beware this: when empaths are pushed too far, the healing gift you carry can turn into a weapon you wield against yourself. The weight of every suffering soul you touch begins to carve trenches in your psyche, and if you don't learn to stand firm, those trenches will become your prison. You drift through crowded rooms carrying the atmosphere of everyone there. A friend's anger becomes your own rage. A stranger's grief seeps into your bones until you cough up tears that aren't yours. You speak softly, as if your gentle voice will soothe the world, but inside you're raging against boundary violations that feel like daggers to the heart. When you finally confront someone who's taken advantage of your kindness, you discover a ferocity that surprises even you. This fire is born from years of swallowing other people's pain until it explodes. She who has always given until she's empty finds herself demanding space, demanding respect. The transition from martyr to sovereign warrior is jagged. You remember those late nights on the couch replaying every hurt and betrayal in your head, wondering how compassion could feel like such a burden. You realize that your shadow side is not the absence of light, but the accumulation of unacknowledged anguish. Allowing that shadow to fester without integration invites a reckoning where your own kindness becomes venom. There's a point when silence no longer calms your spirit. The Stoic within you whispers, "Endure." But endurance without discernment is masochism. You learn from Marcus Aurelius that true strength lies in governing your inner citadel, not surrendering it. Every time you absorb someone else's toxicity without cleansing your own wells, you chip away at your foundation. The empath's greatest danger is turning inward what never belonged to her confusing borrowed misery for her own identity. The world sees you as gentle as negligible, but they fail to account for what happens when you finally draw a line in the sand. That moment arrives like a thunderclap. The empath who's been walked on refuses to step aside. Suddenly, the same energy that once coalesced around other people's suffering becomes a laser beam of self-preservation. You don't just say no quietly. You unleash condemnation upon those who misread your mercy for weakness. In that instant, you become a force they never saw coming. He once thought you would bend under his neglect. He never anticipated that the empath's fury is as deep as her compassion. When you rebuke a lover for violating your boundaries, you're not just upset, you're reclaiming your sovereignty. Shadow integration isn't about burying your aggression, it's about teaching your anger where and when to burn. You let go of the idea that you must carry every burden. Instead, you become the guardian of your own energy. They whisper that empaths are fragile, unable to cope with the world's intensity. Yet those same voices shrink back when you stand, tall eyes aflame with righteous indignation. You realize that empathy, without boundaries, is a hollow altar. You must consecrate your own spirit first. Only then can you decide where your compassion will flow, rather than allowing it to be siphoned off by every cry for help. You step into your power like a moon rising through storm clouds, illuminating the terrain you once traversed blindly. Each heartbeat echoes a promise: never again will you be subsumed by another's sorrow. Because an empath who refuses to be a doormat becomes a master of her own destiny. And that mastery demands harsh lessons. You learn to detach with love, to filter energies like the ancient river goddess who let only clear water pass. Soon enough, you'll understand that this transformation isn't betrayal of your nature, it's its highest expression. The empath who harnesses her own intensity becomes an alchemist, transmuting chaos into grace. But first, you must survive the crucible of being pushed too far, when every whisper of pain threatens to drown you. You must emerge with your heart intact, tempered by fire but never devoured by it. You feel the echo of every unmet need pulsing through your veins, a silent drumbeat demanding recognition. In past relationships, you held the boundary so loosely that it ceased to exist. Each criticism, each dismissive glance drilled into your self-worth like nails into wood. That old pattern whispered, "Your value lies in your sacrifice." But you discover now that sacrifice without reciprocity becomes a contract to your own erasure. The empath's journey curves sharply inward when you finally understand that giving must be balanced by reclaiming. You start to see how couples repeat the same dance. He projects his anxiety onto you, you absorb it, and try to soothe only to awaken next to a stranger's depression in your own body. It's the anima and animus tango, two archetypal shadows circling one another until confusion reigns. In those moments, you're both therapist and patient healer and wounded child. Codependency becomes your default mode because it offers the illusion of connection. But true connection insists on mutual presence, not on one person's ghost chasing another's echo. The trauma you carry isn't merely a relic from childhood. It's an active script you replay whenever someone mirrors your pain. Your inner child cries out in every argument, "I deserve kindness. I deserve to be seen." Yet you silence her voice to maintain harmony, rationalizing that discomfort is preferable to conflict. Stoicism taught you resilience, but without self-compassion it mutates into emotional tyranny, an unfeeling edit of your own tender heart. One day you catch yourself apologizing for someone else's anger, lowering your shoulders as if to shield the world from its own storms. In that flash you glimpse the irony. The empath asks forgiveness for being human, no more. You honor the parts of you that tremble with vulnerability rather than belittling them as weak. When aggression arises, which it will, you recognize it as a messenger from your shadow, not as an indictment of your worth. He says you're too sensitive, that your highly sensitive person label is an excuse. You used to nod, swallowing disbelief whole. Now you reply with quiet confidence, refusing to shrink. You learn to articulate your boundary like a guardian at the gate. "I feel discomfort when you raise your voice. Please lower it, or I cannot stay." That sentence becomes a spell, dissolving patterns that once held you in their iron grip. It humbles those who relied on your pliancy, forcing them to either respect you or retreat. Through this ordeal, your individuation process accelerates. You peel away the layers that absorbed parental expectations, social judgments, and the collective grief of generations. Each layer removed reveals a clearer core, a flame that no longer flickers at every draft of emotion around you. The Stoics remind you that external events are beyond your control. Your interpretations and responses, however, are yours alone. So you begin to curate your inner environment, choosing which feelings to water and which to let go. In shadow integration, you confront the rage you once denied. It arises as a dark tide roaring beneath your calm exterior. Instead of burying it, you meet it with curious compassion. What does it want to tell you? That your needs matter, that lines drawn in the sand aren't cruelties, but declarations of self-respect. By listening to that voice, you transform anger from a wrecking ball into a protective shield. She watches you from within, the wounded child, whose tears once fueled your martyrdom. You kneel beside her now, offering reassurance. "I see you. I will carry you with gentleness." That moment reframes empathy, not as an all-consuming vortex, but as a sacred exchange where your soul and another's breathe together, then release. You become the alchemist who transmutes pain into insight, sorrow into strength. Soon your relationships will no longer be tests of endurance, but mirrors reflecting healthy boundaries. The lover who once thrived on your submission finds himself confronted with your quiet insistence on equilibrium. Some will falter, unable to handle the empath who demands respect as fervently as she offers compassion. Others will rise to the challenge, forging alliances built on mutual honor and honest vulnerability. As you continue this path, remember that your power as an empath lies not in infinite giving, but in conscious sharing. You choose where your energy flows, and you reclaim what once slipped through your grasp. The world needs your empathy, but it needs it tempered by sovereignty and wisdom, Only then can you stand unwavering in your light. You notice how exhaustion settles into your bones after a day of unconsciously filtering everyone's emotions. Your heart races at the slightest tremor of tension in the room, yet when you try to articulate this weight, you're met with dismissal. Calm down. It's not that deep. In those moments, you realize that your sensitivity is both a blessing and a battlefield. Your energy field, once porous as water, now demands careful tending. You learn that true self-care isn't bubble baths and scented candles alone. It's the rigorous practice of emotional hygiene, cleansing your aura of residual negativity before you fall asleep. He circles back with a familiar tactic, gaslighting your perception of reality until you question the authenticity of your own feelings. You used to apologize for your tears, for your tremors of empathy, as if they were crimes. Now you recognize this manipulation as a test of your boundaries. You refuse to retract your emotional experience to make others comfortable. In corners of your mind, the ancient Stoics whisper, if someone can force you to believe and act against your will, they are stronger than you, but no one can make you feel less than yourself unless you let them. Epictetus. You repeat this mantra when your throat tightens under another's coercion. Your shadow self takes center stage when you least expect it. During a lunch break, you catch an impulse to lash out at the coworker who unloaded her grief onto you over coffee. The anger surprises you, it bubbles up translucent and bright like molten metal. You resist the urge to self-judge, knowing that rage is fear's envoy. It tells you that your boundaries have been breached yet again. You invite this dark visitor to sit beside you rather than shove it back into the cellar. What do you need, you ask. You need respect, it replies. And in that exchange, you reclaim a piece of yourself that had gone missing. Sometimes you drift into dreams where you walk barefoot through a field of mirrors. Each reflection shows an aspect of your psyche. The nurturer, the martyr, the victim, the avenger. In Jungian terms, these are the complexes you carry, fragments of your ego that collide whenever you encounter conflict. The empath's task is to reunite these splintered selves, to forge them into a cohesive identity that does not fragment under pressure. You awaken with the taste of molten silver on your tongue, a symbolic reminder that the integration process can be both beautiful and searingly painful. On evenings when the world falls silent, you sit cross-legged, eyes closed, and imagine a fortress rising around your heart. This citadel is not a prison, but a sanctuary, its walls porous enough to let love in, yet sturdy enough to keep exploitation out. You visualize your energy like a bright river, contained within embankments of self-respect. You meditate on Marcus Aurelius's words. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Here you discover that serenity isn't the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. She watches you from a place deep within your wounded inner child, longing for validation. You hold her close, offering a silent vow that her voice will no longer be overshadowed by external dramas. In your waking life, this vow takes form. You decline last-minute favors that would drain you. You leave toxic conversations before they fracture your resolve. You carve out time to nourish your own passions, painting, writing, or simply sitting with a cup of tea in solitude. These acts may seem mundane, but for an empath, they are revolutions of self-preservation. As you refine these boundaries, you notice a shift in your relationships. Some people recoil, unable to navigate an empath who no longer collapses at their first emotional hurricane. Others step forward, drawn to your newfound clarity. A friend proposes a heart-to-heart that ends in tears, but this time you don't absorb her pain unfiltered. Instead, you hold space with compassion, then gently set down her anguish like a lantern at your feet. You offer guidance from your place of stability, rather than from a space of depletion. You recall the moment you confronted the pattern of codependency, a pattern so ingrained that you once mistook it for love. Love isn't a chain made of other people's needs. It's a fabric woven from mutual care. You sever the strands that bound you to people who only wanted a vessel for their emptiness. In doing so, you embrace a paradox. To love more deeply, you must cherish yourself first. This is the crux of Jung's individuation, recognizing that your personal myth is as vital as any collective narrative. The empath's journey is not a straight path, but a spiral doubling back on itself as new layers of shadow emerge. Yet with each revolution you ascend closer to wholeness. Your empathy transforms from a liability into a calibrated instrument. You can dial it up to connect deeply with someone in pain, and dial it down to preserve your own equilibrium. You become the conductor of your emotional symphony, not its hijacked instrument. In this alchemical process, you internalize a final Stoic lesson. Externals are neither good nor bad, they are indifferent. The value lies in your response. The empath who masters her reactions becomes invincible. No longer will you be tossed by every gust of feeling. You will stand amid storms, heart blazing, unshaken in your sanctum. The weight of unnoticed energies begins to lift as you learn to track the currents that once drowned you. You feel the first genuine thrill of autonomy, when you're no longer a sponge absorbing every ambient vibration. Instead, you're a lighthouse, sending out your own beam, discerning what deserves your light and what must be banished to darkness. In moments of stillness, you sense the tremor of your ego craving admiration for your sacrifice. You resist it, knowing that genuine self-worth radiates from authenticity, not from applause. He tries again, slipping into your world with stories of his pain, expecting you to collapse under the tidal wave of his trauma. Before you would have dropped everything to rescue him, diving into his abyss as if it were your own. Today you listen with clarity, your heart tender, but your boundaries intact. You honor his struggle without letting it override your own. This distinction is revolutionary empathy that doesn't bleed into martyrdom, but stands as a bridge carrying mutual understanding rather than a one-way ticket towards self-annihilation. You study your reflection and notice the hardened grace in your posture. Your eyes no longer shimmer with desperation. They glow with resolve. In the mirror of your soul, you confront the animus that once thrummed beneath your softness, the part of you that craves victory over injustice. You don't deny its existence. Instead, you allow it to temper your compassion, ensuring that your healing hands are never used to heal those who would wound you. Your dreams still bring you to crossroads, each path lined with specters of past selves, the martyr who bled silently, the critic who demanded perfection, the pleaser who traded authenticity for approval. You walk these paths in meditation, greeting each spectre with respect, introducing them to one another, forging a counsel within. When the critic chastises your gentleness, the nurturer stands in its defense. When the pleaser fears rejection, the sovereign voice reassures her. Through this inner counsel, you integrate your fractals into a cohesive self that doesn't fracture under pressure. You encounter situations that once triggered overwhelming anxiety, unexpected text messages, abrupt shifts in plans, casual sarcasm at work. Before these would have sent you spinning, your nervous system flooding with cortisol. Now you pause, you breathe, you name the sensation as signal, not verdict. You acknowledge the emotional input without assigning it cosmic significance. In this practice, you become the curator of your experience, selecting only what nourishes your growth. He watches you change the partner who once mistook your pliability for perpetual devotion. He notices the light in your eyes when you speak your truth, the quiet confidence with which you withdraw from chaos. Some of him recoils, clinging to the old roles that served him. Others rise intrigued by the empath who claims her sovereignty. He begins to ask questions rather than demand solace. He offers support rather than seeking to commandeer your compassion. These interactions feel foreign at first, requiring you to relearn how to trust reciprocity instead of control. Your body remembers the cost of endless giving, tired shoulders, shallow breaths, a heart that raced at the hint of another's distress. You practice somatic exercises, stretching, grounding, centering, to reinforce the messages your nervous system needs to hear. You are safe. You are whole. Each breath becomes a declaration. I belong in my own skin. These small rituals accumulate, forging pathways of resilience where once lay only exhaustion. Sometimes when dusk settles and the world quiets, you light a single candle and speak aloud to the fragments of your soul you've yet to meet. You invite forward the child whose tears you once shamed, the rebel whose anger you once exiled, the lover whose yearning you once silenced. You hold space for them, acknowledging their right to exist. In this silent vigil, you plant seeds of compassion that will bloom into unwavering self-regard. Then there are days when you slip, collapsing back into old patterns. You apologize for speaking up. You swallow discomfort to keep the peace. You answer every crisis call. But these moments are no longer the end of your story. They're signposts on the path. You treat them with gentle curiosity. What drove me here and then? Course correct, reminding yourself that sovereignty isn't perfection, but the relentless practice of returning home to yourself. In these cycles, you witness the true alchemy of an empath's maturation. Suffering doesn't vanish, but it reshapes into purpose. Your pain becomes the forge that tempers your boundaries. Your heartbreak, the compass that guides you toward authentic connection. You recognize that the empath's gift lies not in embodying another's wounds, but in bearing witness without losing your center. The world still trembles with chaos, but you no longer feel destined to drown in its currents. You carry a talisman forged from introspection, shadow integration, and stoic wisdom. With it, you walk forward into relationships that reflect your wholeness back to you rather than trying to complete you with borrowed energy. You awaken one morning to a whisper beneath your ribs, a gentle reminder that your heart is still a sanctuary, not a battleground. In the hush before dawn, you sense how far you've come, no longer a leaf tossed by others' storms, but a tree with roots gripping the earth. Yet the day ahead still brims with potential triggers. An unexpected deadline, an acquaintance's offhand remark, an email marked urgent. Each one carries the old promise of overwhelm. You breathe into the tension, treating it as raw material for your sovereignty rather than proof of your fragility. You discover the power of preemptive boundary setting. Before the workday begins, you affirm aloud, "I will not carry more than I am meant to." This declaration isn't ceremony. It's a neural repatterning, a way to prime your system for healthy limits. When a colleague lands at your desk, eyes glazed with distress, you listen briefly, then gently redirect. "I have a meeting in 15 minutes. Can we schedule a longer chat later?" In past life, you would have skipped the meeting. Now you honor both your compassion and your commitments. He tries once more to pierce your core with guilt. He sends a text dripping in obligation. "I thought you cared about me." You feel the pull of old compulsion, the itch to apologize and comply. In that instant, you catch the ghost of your former self, the martyr who would have crumbled. You pause, crafting your reply with equanimity. "I do care, and I also care about honoring my own space. Let's talk when we can both be fully present." No shame washes over you. Instead, you marvel at the crisp clarity of self-respect. Throughout your day, you practice what modern trauma theory dubs window of tolerance awareness. You learn to recognize when your system veers into hyper-arousal. Your chest tightens, your thoughts race, and to self-soothe before spilling into overwhelm. A short walk around the block, a grounding exercise pressing your bare feet into grass, a brief visualization of your inner fortress. These become your daily rituals. Each one stitches a patch on the tattered fabric of your nervous system. In relationships, you hold space for both your empathic gift and your emerging warrior spirit. A friend calls at midnight, wailing about heartbreak. In the past, you answered immediately, sacrificing sleep for solace. Now you whisper into the receiver, "I hear your pain, and I want to be there. Let me get some rest first, and I'll call you at 9 a.m. This is not a denial of empathy, but a testament to it, because when you answer from fullness rather than depletion, your presence becomes healing rather than draining. She notices your evolution. The partner who once demanded unending compassion now marvels at your composed steadiness. His stories of crisis no longer provoke frantic rescues, but measured empathy. He begins to ask permission. Is now a good time, rather than commandeering your availability? This shift feels strange at first, like learning a new language. Yet you savor it, knowing that mutual respect is the hallmark of sovereign bonding. Each evening you journal not only about your feelings, but also about your boundaries moments. You honored them, moments you bent and lessons gleaned from both. This practice crystallizes your growth. You chart the territory between compassion and collapse, mapping out the contours of your own psyche. With each entry, your sense of agency deepens and the allure of martyrdom fades like a receding tide. On rare days when you slip, when you find yourself apologizing for another's mood or canceling your plans to fix someone else's crisis, you don't condemn yourself. Instead, you trace the trigger. Was it a fear of rejection, a longing for approval? By pinpointing the motive, you dismantle its power. You remind yourself that boundaries can flex without breaking, allowing empathy to flow without submerging your identity. The alchemy of this work reveals itself in small miracles. You feel fully alive in your body, no longer numb or overstimulated. You engage in conversations with authenticity rather than automatic acquiescence. You sleep with a full heart, unencumbered by the residue of others' pain. And in your solitude you experience profound companionship with the self you once neglected. Your shadow twin, the version of you that used rage as an armor, steps into the light, tempered by compassion. You wield growth and grit in equal measure, fierce in protection, tender in presence. This balanced duality is the fruit of shadow integration, the moment when light and dark cease their war and instead dance in harmony. Soon, only one part of you will remain after this final stretch. The sovereign empath, free from the chains of overgiving, radiant in her capacity to feel without falling apart. You carry within you the wisdom of Jung, the courage of the Stoics, and the clarity of modern trauma science. Armed with these teachings, you stand at the threshold of your final metamorphosis. You awaken to a morning light that feels different, as if the sun itself acknowledges your rebirth. The cloak of burden you once draped across your shoulders has fallen away, revealing a figure forged in both compassion and steel. No longer do you wear your empathy like a cracked porcelain mask, vulnerable to every crack and chip. Instead, you embody it as tempered glass, strong enough to withstand impact, yet clear enough to let your inner radiance shine through. In this new chapter, you move through the world with deliberate softness. When a friend reaches out with urgent pleas, you respond not from panic, but from presence. Your words carry weight because they emerge from a heart that is anchored, not adrift. You listen fully, then choose with intention how much of yourself to share. Your energy is no longer an endless reservoir to be drained. It's a wellspring you protect, nurture, and release at your discretion. Where once you confounded love with self-erasure, you now practice what self-worth truly means. You honor your needs as sacred, knowing that tending to yourself is the first act of love you can offer the world. When you rise each day, you greet yourself in the mirror with the reverence due a fellow traveler who has weathered storms and emerged unbowed. You trace the contours of your face with gratitude for every tear you shed, every boundary you forged, every shadow you faced. In relationships, this transformation is undeniable. The partner who once tested your limits now meets you on equal ground. Conversations flow like a dance of equals, each step chosen, each advance met with consent. He sees you not as a soft place to land, but as a sovereign being whose boundaries define the beauty of your union. The lovers who respected your new strength remain, the ones who couldn't have drifted away, leaving space for connections that honor both giving and receiving. Your professional life mirrors this shift. When colleagues attempt to offload their crises, you offer solutions without sacrificing your workload. You champion collaboration without martyrdom. You set clear deadlines and speak up when demands overstep. And in doing so, you model a form of empathy rooted in mutual respect, showing others that caring doesn't require collapse. Your inner landscape is now a sanctuary. You've built walls that filter out toxicity and gates that open only for those who meet you with integrity. Within these walls, your psyche thrives, curiosity flourishes, creativity bursts forth, and peace settles like a gentle tide. You spend time alone, without guilt, recognizing solitude as the soil in which your sovereignty takes root. This culmination is not an end, but a new beginning, a cycle of continual growth where your empathic gift coexists with unshakable boundaries. You've integrated your shadow aspects, the martyr, the pleaser, the avenger, into a unified self that responds rather than reacts. When anger comes, you harness it to protect. When sorrow arises, you honor it without drowning. When joy emerges, you celebrate it without hesitation. You carry with you the echoes of Seneca's wisdom. No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity. You understand now that your prosperity lies not in external accolades, but in the sovereignty of your own spirit. You've been deceived by nothing. Instead, you've been refined by every challenge. Now, as you step forward into life's unpredictable currents, you do so with a heart that is both open and armored, soft to love, hard to break. Your gaze holds the serenity of someone who has walked through fire and found that she is at her core unconsumed. You stand ready to face whatever comes, not as a victim, but as the architect of your own destiny. Your empath's journey reaches its apex in a single realization. Strength and sensitivity are not opposing forces, but a single shining sword, and you wield that sword with grace. An empath reborn is neither victim nor martyr, but a sovereign being wielding compassion like a blade of light.